Hello and welcome back to ISPA's hybrid January 2022 Congress for Pitch New Works. This year, for the first time, we're presenting Pitch New Works online to you, our virtual delegates. Then in 4 hours' time, we're doing it again in person at BAM, the Brooklyn Academy of Music. And for both iterations, we're deeply grateful to Fisher Dax, back with us again as sponsors of Pitch New Works. Fisher Dax are a great force in the global world of theatre design, and they're also long-term loyal contributors to ISPA and supporters regularly of Pitch New Works. This whole experience has something miraculous about it. Almost every project that you'll hear about in the next 2 years has been impacted by the COVID pandemic, rehearsals disrupted, premieres aborted, tours cancelled. Every one of the projects that we're going to present to you is its own miraculous triumph over adversity, making me admire these presenting teams even more. So today's hugely contrasted projects come from the UK and Canada, Taiwan and Australia, 2 from the US, and then partnership projects between the US and Palestine, Chile and New Zealand, and Canada and Japan. 63 projects applied. They were all forensically reviewed by ISPA's Pitch Selection Committee, who distilled them down to the 9 that we'll see in the next 2 hours. The committee brings together people with long experience in project development, so they're good at spotting the touring potential in these kinds of projects. Committee's also chosen to include people who between them have very widespread experience of different cultures, different countries, different audiences, really all over the world. So it brings a very global perspective to the way they select the projects. Pitch New Works comprises projects that have already premiered. They're looking for touring opportunities, and also projects earlier in their development where, in some cases, you can be involved not just as presenters, but as co-commissioners or co-producers. Presenters will explain that as we go. In today's pitch, 5 of the 9 projects have already premiered, and the other 4 are still in development. They will premiere at some point in the next 2 years. And again, maybe it's a sign of the extraordinary year we've lived through, but over half of these projects are interdisciplinary works. So if you've been with us with Pitch New Works before, you'll know how it works. Each pair of presenters has 7 minutes. Then we have a 3-minute Q&A. Realistically, we can't do a global virtual Q&A, but you do still have access to all the presenters. You'll see their contact details in the handout linked below and in the chat. So once they've finished their presentations, do reach out to them if you have questions, anything that their presentations didn't answer. During this session, do also please use the chat field if you've seen the work or presented these artists to add brief comments, especially on how the work connected with audiences. Presenters, it's so valuable to have first-hand feedback from colleagues in the business of how audiences have responded to the projects or the artists, so that as we go through the projects, do please contribute any of that first-hand experience that you have to share. We start in Canada, in Quebec, with Al-Arpi. It's a collaboration between the director Laurence Dauphiné and the radio creator Marie-Laurence Rancourt, and it's produced by Collective Al-Arpi and the groundbreaking Montreal theatre company La Messe Basse. Project combines the languages of theatre with community radio. It's to question our idea of listening, of sharing, and of silence, taking as its starting point 5 young Inuit women who collaborated to create a sound documentary. Al-Arpi won Laurence Dauphiné the Playwrights Prize at Montreal's Centre de Théâtre Aujourd'hui and premiered there 2 years ago. And here to present it are one of the 2 performers, Olivier Oviluk, and the co-creator and director of the piece, Laurence Dauphiné, and they're both in Montreal in Canada.
Hi, my name is Laurence Dauphiné. I'm a multidisciplinary artist based in Montreal, Canada, and I'm the co-creator and director of Al-Arpi.
Hi, my name is Olivia Uviluk. I'm a multidisciplinary artist and activist originally from Kangetsouk, Nunavik, which is in northern Quebec. I'm now living in Montreal, and I am one of the performers in Al-Arpi. Al-Arpi was made possible by the joint effort of a group of Inuit and non-Inuit collaborators, and we're honored to be representing them while speaking at ISPA today.
I'm very excited about this project, and I'm also very proud of the relationships that have developed because of it. Al-Arpi is a piece that was imagined from the get-go as a hybrid project that would mix sound creation and theater. Firstly, a group of young Inuit women accompanied by Marie-Laurence Rancourt from the podcast creation company Magneto created a sound documentary sculpted through their own words and silences.
A documentary that reflected the desire of the collective to position the piece in contrast to the often conveyed images of the North. A delicate piece inspired by the Inuit culture that it depicts and that takes the act of listening to a whole other level.
And then we took the documentary and created a play with it. So on stage, two women from Nunavik live out their lives, while through the radio, which plays a crucial role of self-determination in Northern communities, the sound of a documentary flows out for both us and them to hear. The documentary speaks about their very experience, and the women on stage will, at some point, need to confront it. Al-Arpi opened in 2019 at the Centre du Théâtre d'Aujourd'hui in Montreal and received the Public Choice Award that year. The edited play was also nominated for a Governor General's Award. A great tour of Al-Arpi was planned, but was halted by the pandemic. Nonetheless, the play performed virtually at the last Theatre Treffen Stuckemarkt in Berlin, as well as at the FTA in Montreal this year. But unfortunately, it hasn't had the opportunity yet to be seen by international delegates the way it should have.
So here is what the play looks and sounds like.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Michael Cameron, the local Fish and Game Officer.
Inut sungalo, uy sungalo, tamangin ni piu sa kakama kino mga manalo laki yung nga. Taga piu sira asyo malaktu tuki kakun na ito nga kisya ni.
So the audience watching Al-Arpi becomes immersed in a soundscape of the North, as if they were foreigners that had magically been thrown in the heart of a northern village. Spatialized sounds of the natural environment, the people who inhabit it, and the intertwined Inuktitut, French, and English languages slowly incarnate the North. And as the piece progresses, it becomes a shared exchange between performer and watcher. The two women on stage become aware of this unfamiliar watching presence, and ultimately they decide to open the door and to give the audience access to their intimacy, to their home. The show then morphs into a communal moment of informal conversation between audience and performers.
From the start, this project required that we would be wrapped in ethical, political, and sensitive reflection, ranging from the collective work between Indigenous and non-Indigenous, the relative importance of speech within culture, and the use of aesthetics and processes that respect the individuals present. From then on, the process became the project.
Al-Arpi always had listening at its core, a specificity which led us to revisit our way of doing both radio and theater. How do we not reproduce historical relations of domination? How do we actualize new relationships? And also, how do we include the audience in our preoccupations by translating our thoughts into a true sensorial experience for them? In creating the show, we ardently searched to establish a process of creation and performance rooted in the patient use of time, openness towards sharing, nuance, and uncertainty.
With Al-Arpi, we ask you to slow down your inner rhythm. We invite the spectator to adopt a rare quality of listening. This endeavor is the first step towards the possibility of a true encounter. This is what the show proposes.
We're now looking for touring opportunities all around the world. We believe that this piece is a truly universal one and can speak to anyone. But we also believe that audiences from northern countries could be particularly interested, as well as institutions that are curious and sensitive to indigenous communities and northern realities. We're also excited about meeting presenters that are looking for non-traditional theatrical work that involves a strong multimedia component and an innovative approach to storytelling. I think it's important to mention that the show is fully accessible in both English and French because it's fully subtitled. So for those of you who would like to catch Al-Arpi live, know that we'll be performing at the Push Festival in Vancouver in a couple of weeks, at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa in the fall, as well as at the Luminato Festival in Toronto in June 2023. Feel free to contact me, Laurence, with any question you may have.
What an incredibly beautiful work, really lovely work. So you've got those touring dates in Canada in your diary. Do you have plans for other parts of the world?
So far, we don't. Like I said, we were supposed to go to Berlin. Physically, we had to do the show virtually, unfortunately, last May. We presented at the FTA this year, but there weren't international presenters. It's been a bit like bittersweet for us. So we're really hoping that presenting at the Push later this month and also this pitch at ISPA will change the game for us.
And every one of the pitches we're doing today, COVID has impacted it in some way. So nobody will be surprised to hear any of that.
Yeah.
Two things struck me about the size of the space. Firstly, I know that there are some issues, and perhaps you could explain these, about sightline issues that govern the size of the space, but also just seeing the video, it feels to me a very intimate piece. And I'm wondering what is the ideal size of space in your mind to present it?
Yeah, at first our ideal size was 300 because we wanted to protect this kind of intimacy of the piece. But since then, we were asked to perform in bigger venues, and we consider it every time. There are sightline, let's say, issues because the set is the facade of a house with a tiny window, and people see the action inside the house only through that window. So we need to make sure that everybody gets a good experience, depending on where they're sitting. So we do study the seed plantation in every venue to make sure that the conditions are optimal for people.
It struck me also watching it, the North is such a special spiritual element of Canada. And I'm presumably the great joy to you in touring this work to other countries, other regions, will be to transmit some sort of sense of that, to create an international understanding for the extraordinary nature of Canada's far north.
Yeah, exactly, because the North is very different from the South of Canada. It is very unique, and we have a way of living that is not very common, like being careful of not going outside of the house when there are wolves or polar bears outside in the community, or it's a reality that is not common and people are often unaware of. So watching Al-Arpi can make people learn about a different way of living that can surprise them.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful project. Thank you so much, both of you, Olivier Ubiluc and Laurence Dauphiné, both in Montreal, in Canada. Thank you very much for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Anthony.
Next to New York for Black Lodge. It's the latest work from composer David T. Little in collaboration with the librettist Anne Waldman and the screenplay writer and director Michael Joseph McQuilkin. And it explores a complex landscape, including the mythology of the writer William S. Burroughs, industrial rock, classical opera. It's the latest new work from Beth Morrison Projects, and it was set to premiere at Opera Philadelphia last season. COVID scotched that, so instead, they postponed the live premiere and instead adapted the project to the screen, making a 70-minute feature film of a music theatre event filmed over the past year in Maine, Los Angeles, and in the extraordinary El Mirage Desert in California. Black Lodge premieres as a film plus live event at the O Festival, Opera Philadelphia, this October. And here to present it are the creative producer and the president of Beth Morrison Projects, who's in Boston today, Beth Morrison, and the composer, who's joining us from Weehawken in New Jersey, David T. Little.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm David T. Little, composer and creator of Black Lodge. As with many of my works, Black Lodge began with a question. Did David Lynch, William S. Burroughs, and Antonin Artaud directly influence one another's work? But more personal questions would soon emerge, pertaining to my own artistic practice and how it relates to my personal and spiritual life. I'm drawn to dark subject matter as an artist. How might this affect my soul? Black Lodge is my answer to these and other questions, a journey through darkness seeking transcendental light.
Hello, I'm Beth Morrison, creative producer. My company, Beth Morrison Projects, commissioned and produced Black Lodge. The original intent was to do a stage version. However, with COVID, we decided to turn it into a film. Luckily, our director, Michael McQuilkin, is equally a film and stage director. So he wrote the screenplay and conceived the film version, which you will see an excerpt of here today. We have 4 ways to tour this project, including several live versions, which mean watching the film on large screen and having the musicians and singer playing live in costume as a cinematic concert experience. Now I'll read the blurb about the film, and then we'll show the excerpt. Trapped in a nightmarish bardo, a place between death and rebirth, a tormented writer faces down demons of his own making. Forced to confront his darkest moment, he mines fractured and repressed memories for a way out. Loosely inspired by the complicated mythologies of writer William S. Burroughs of Naked Lunch fame and others, Black Lodge uses industrial rock and opera to take viewers through a Lynchian escape room and questions what it ultimately takes to face ourselves.
Beings could live off him. Broken limbs, fractured face. Broken limbs, fractured face. Some bargain in this botched life. Broken limbs, fractured face. Holes for a demon. Holy, holy. Electricity is a body await, a resting of face, the compressed magnet, repressed surface. Live, pulverized states of mind. La la, la la. Death, which is black, black magic. Va, 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 va. A madman survives the ministrations of the doctors, the nurse, prophet eating the rotting bodies of the dead. Electricity is a body back from the dead on the wheel of a hellish life. The howling, three-headed Cerberus, without doctors, no patience. Without doctors, no disease skulls. Butcher whip to flay to torment. Doctors, cause human sick society. Coming back from the dead on the wheel of a hellish life. A three-headed Cerberus. Cut, coop, sucked by larva. Medicine lice. Broken limbs, fractured face. Some bargain in this botched life. Cracked and missing teeth. Holes for a demon. Diabolic feeding. What's missing in the tortured body? Electricity is a body, a weight, a resting of a face, the compressed magnet, repressed surface from the outside of a savage blood. I go through it. I go, don't forget it. I go through it. I go, don't forget it.
That's terrific. I can just imagine festival directors watching this, wanting to ask, is there any scope for people to come on board as co-commissioners before the premiere?
I mean, we're always happy to have people on board. So yes, we, as you might expect, this is our first feature film, and we are really great at doing stage works, but doing film was a whole new bargain. So yeah, we're something like close to $100,000 over budget. So if there are other
So you would welcome
people who want to come on board,
co-producers.
I would welcome co-producers.
Is the film? I love it. Is the film in the Live Plus film version? Is it the same film? Is it the same film but with a live with an element presented live?
Yes, it is. It is the film, and then the band in costume with the singer in costume, as well as either a live string quartet, a local string quartet, or we may do the quartet on backing tracks. So there are 4 different versions, but yes, it is a cinematic concert, if you will, for the live experience.
Yeah, the film is the same. And I was actually going to ask you about the local quartet. I mean, I was trying to get a sense of how hard the music is and what kind of rehearsal do you need if someone is providing a local quartet? What sort of rehearsal would you need with them?
David, why don't you take that?
Well, scheduling is not my forte in terms of production, but I will say that there are a couple of tricky passages, but it's definitely not the hardest string quartet music that I've written. The tricky thing, which is just an experience question, is do the players have experience playing with click tracks, because it is all to a click track. So that I think that would be the main question, is how comfortable are the players with click?
Yeah. No, I was wondering about that. And just, Beth, I'm sorry, just go back to the business of it. Just go exactly what the different versions and options are? Just one sentence each so we get that really clear.
Absolutely. So the first option is the film only, and nobody has to travel with that version. Although, of course, doing talkbacks or other things, if you would like to have David and Michael and Anne and myself, that's always an option. Option 2 is to travel with 11 company members. That's the film, and then Timor and the Dime Museum live, and then with recorded string quartet. And so that is 11 people traveling. A third option is to travel Timor and the Dime Museum, our production team, and have the local string quartet live. And that would still be 11 people traveling. And then the fourth option is to travel both the band and the string quartet, along, of course, with the production company. And that's 15 people traveling.
So there is no excuse not to take this, because whatever your circumstances, there's a version that works for you.
Exactly. That's what we're going for.
Yes. Beth Morrison in Boston and David T. Little in Weehawken, New Jersey. Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anthony.
Next we go to Taiwan for the Center. It's a commission by the National Theatre and Concert Hall and the National Kaohsiung Center for the Arts, Weibuying. It calls itself the biggest single-roof art center in the world. It's been co-created by the dancer and choreographer Cho Shu-yi and the director and playwright Cheng Chi-chung, and they both perform in the piece. Last year, Cho was invited to the National Kaohsiung Center as first artist in residence. He's best known for creating works that reflect the state of individuals or collectives in different social contexts. In the center, Cho invites Cheng into a conversation about their lives, their families, and their communities. The center premieres this April at the National Human Rights Museum in Taiwan, and here to present the center is the Weibuying artist in residence and the dance choreographer at Taiwan's National Kaohsiung Center for the Arts, Cho Shu-yi, who's the co-creator and performer of the piece, and he's joining us now from Kaohsiung in Taiwan.
Hello， 我是周书义，我是阿仲与我的创作者跟表演者之一。那今天要跟大家分享的是阿仲与我这个作品的一个创作过程。那可以看到这张照片，我坐在一个轮椅上面，然后阿仲也坐在一个轮椅上面。在3年前，我开始在想，到底这个世界是怎么样去看待不同的身体，然后生活在同样的城市，或是说一个城市能够如何接受不同的身体一起生活在同一个地方。所以当我开始跟阿仲相遇的时候，我们开始在教室试着让2个完全不同的身体去交汇，然后去找到平衡。为什么说是平衡呢？因为阿仲跟我分享了一个很重要的事情是，我们的身体一直是在失衡当中去寻找平衡。所以你可以看见照片中是我们在动的过程当中，我们的手跟肩膀跟骨骼是一直在用不同的方式去堆叠。那作品当中有3个很重要的事情，一个是口述影像，也就是让看不见的人可以听见声音，也另外一个是情境字幕，也就是让听不见的人可以看见文字。最重要的是轮椅席，也就是让身障的朋友、不方便的朋友可以在一个剧场当中，在不同的视角当中看见这个作品的存在。在过程当中，我们开着轮椅在这个城市当中移动，去到剧场，去到排练场，试着去了解轮椅的朋友要如何走入剧场，走入一个表演的场域。所以我开始去学习政治中的使用的辅具，也就是支撑我们身体移动的不同的工具。当你的身体需要被支撑的时候，你是如何移动？我记得我们在开着轮椅在街上的时候，问过阿仲说，到底一般的人要如何去了解什么是共融？阿仲说，试着去改变你的移动以及走路的方式，这个就是可以让你去了解什么是共融。所以我们开始开着2个电轮在城市当中移动，去认识不同的空间要怎么样 生活。然后最重要的是我们在教室里面给了一个工作坊，从工作坊去分享我们在3年前遇到之后，到这一次开始创作是怎么样透过工作坊去认识这样子的身体要怎么样子去运行。所以我们最后就把这个作品带去街上，带到公共空间去跟更多人的分享，让不同的人去看见这样的事情发生，这样的相遇。最后回到剧场，我想提问，一个剧场到底需要多少的轮椅的位置？因此我当初在卫武营的时候，我们就让第一排的观众都拆掉了，让更多的轮椅的朋友可以走入剧场。我觉得这个是这个作品做到很重要的事情。那最后当然是这3年累积的过程，如何在剧场当中发生了这样的变化。因为阿忠与我所要讨论的就是一个到底什么是中心，生命是被这个世界被放置在什么样不同的角落跟位置去看待。所以接下来我想跟你分享这个作品的影片，可以透过影片里面的光和影跟声音去了解阿忠与我的创作。
有一个人伸出手，让我们做，把它放在你的身上，你做，你有。
掌心相对，双手之间是一颗头颅的距离。我把这颗头慢慢举高，
影子中那个人是谁？他帮我盖了一间小房子，那个长长的身影让我有一个安心的堡垒，即使有时候我不会待在里面。
牵住他的手，用最轻的力气牵引他前进，转圈，滑行，
在一片土地面前敞开，在偌大的空间里靠近，抛出，回旋。
Thank you very much. The performances that have happened already in Taiwan, can you just say where they were and when they were, the performances that have happened so far?
这个作品在 今年4月的时候在台北两厅院首演，它是在一个小剧场的空间，然后接着今年，然后8月到了台中歌剧院，也是在一个小剧场，到了9月到了卫武营，是在一个大的剧场空间，所以这个作品它有了小剧场跟大剧场的不同的版本，然后接着这个礼拜就会到国家人权博物馆，它是一个礼堂的空间，它不是一个剧场，所以这个作品它在经历不同的空间的变化，然后一直有了新的段落的发生，然后也有新的面貌。
Yeah, I got it. And I see you're about to do it in the Taiwan Human Rights Museum. I mean, it made me wonder, does that mean it doesn't really need a theatre? I mean, could people present it in other spaces, not theatres?
这个作品它其实到了国家人权博物馆，它是一个免费的演出，也就是它更面对更多的大众。然后它不是一个剧场，也就是这个作品它其实有了一个很大的弹性，可以去适应不同的场地，所以它在一个美术馆，在一个博物馆里头也是可以发生的。因为作品里面最重要的是我跟阿忠的身体，然后再来才是这些辅具的空间，所以我一直觉得可能只要是人可以到达的地方，这个作品它都可能会产生新的版本跟新的变化。
And are there particular parts of the world that you're keen to take this work? Are there particular countries or places to which you're keen to tour?
Sorry. 这个作品在面对人的时候，我觉得它没有一个特定的国家或是特定的人是不能够去的，所以唯一是我在想，到底不是亚洲的国家，他怎么看待台湾去思考这样子的议题，特别是在共融的议题上，或是身障的艺术上，好像有时候我们看得很窄，所以我一直希望这个作品在完成之后，它是可以去世界各地去分享的。只要是人，我觉得他都可以来遇见这样子的主题，然后去遇见这样的作品，是在剧场或非剧场都可以去观赏这样子的艺术发生。
Qiu Shuyi in Taiwan, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Next, we're back in New York for Displayed by Heidi Latsky Dance. Heidi was a principal dancer for the Bill T. Jones Arnie Zane dance company. Then, in 2001, she founded her own company. 5 years later, the Boston-based disabled interdisciplinary artist Lisa Bufano commissioned her to create a 20-minute solo, and that collaboration was a catalyst for Heidi for an artistic shift towards a completely reimagined approach to diversity and inclusivity. Heidi's now a powerful advocate for disability rights, serving on many important task forces and working groups. A version of Displayed was workshopped, they call it a stage in the journey, in March 2018 and 2019 at Baruch College in New York as part of the CUNY Dance Initiative, that's the City University of New York. And here now to present Displayed are the artistic and executive director of Heidi Latsky Dance, Heidi Latsky, who's also the choreographer of the work. She's in New York. And the founder and creative producer, an agent for Rhythm of the Arts, who are the agent for the project, Leah Keith, who I think, am I right, is in Rossendale, New York?
Yes, I'm in Rosendale, New York.
All yours.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Hello, my name is Leah Keith. I'm founder of Rhythm of the Arts and representative for Heidi Latsky Dance, one of the premier integrated dance companies worldwide and a pioneer in the field. Since 2001, Heidi Latsky Dance has challenged established norms of how dancers are identified and defined by their physicality. And currently, the company is expanding into interactive technology and activating spaces beyond the four walls of the proscenium to encourage deeper connections between performers and audiences.
Displayed is the culmination of years of integration and site-specific installations. It is like the opening night of a brand new art exhibit, but where the art is live. It is about the gaze, inside and out, bringing together art, dance, fashion, and technology in a passionate plea for each dancer to be seen and appreciated. Displayed has so moved audiences in these beginning stages of its creation that we're looking forward to fleshing it out, growing it to its full potential for new communities and spaces. Please play the video.
People look at me and make assumptions.
It's not something that you can just turn off.
My grace, physicality, and vulnerability are all on display.
It scares me because if people knew how angry and sad and tired I was, would they like me?
Male, 26, black hair, white, 6 feet 8 inches, towering over us, small green eyes. Small build, short legs, delicate hands. Sad brown eyes, long face, large nose, angular torso, sizable crotch. Big lips, and Amor, big arms, engorged man.
So I want to disrupt space, dismantle normal, and redefine beauty and virtuosity. I want to promote inclusion and empathy within works that are complex, elegant, raw, and full of joy and fury. I want to engage with technology in a way that brings our humanity out, and I want more and more people to see what I see, to experience my company of diverse dancers as the fierce and vulnerable creatures they are within a context that is outside of the box. Displayed underscores the company's mission that everyone has a story to tell. And it also holds the audience accountable and complicit and presents a world that defies stereotypes and structural bias.
And it's our goal to finalize the displayed experience in this full, stunning, and innovative capacity as fully envisioned by Heidi, so that we're integrating the volumetric hologram videos, the audio augmented reality, the wearable art and fashion designs, as well as community members in the show to create an immersive experience for everyone who comes to experience it. So to that end, we are actively seeking commissioners to realize this large-scale vision of Displayed, and also presenting partners for once that is established. The experience needs to be recast, choreography remounted, technology streamlined, and ideal venues include large warehouse spaces, armories, flex spaces, museums and galleries, as well as prosceniums where the audience can enter through the backstage. This immersive experience comes at a time when we must engage our audiences beyond the proscenium, where representation matters more than ever, and promoting empathy of the other is paramount.
Thank you very much indeed. It's obviously a huge journey you're on from those two astonishing workshops to what you're now describing as the finished piece of work. I mean, where are you on that journey? I mean, have you reached the finished stage? Is it ready to go, or are you still developing it?
We're still developing it. Partly because of COVID, we had to put a stop. But the thing about COVID was it gave me an opportunity to really think about the work, watch the work. One of the things that I discovered is that audiences really want to stay for a very long time, especially with the audio enhancement. They want to stay with the sculpture. So after a lot of dancing, the dancers are still, and they have to be still for quite a while to accommodate this interaction. And so one of my main goals is really to shorten it, to get it more condensed, more exciting, and then it's over. Right, so that the audience has time to experience the sculptures again. And the hope, obviously, is that their perceptions have shifted. And the technology is also pretty extensive now, so we have to really hone in on that.
And I'm sure, I won't ask you now, but I'm sure people will be interested to know, how much of the technology travels with you, how much they'd have to do. I was just wondering about the space. I mean, obviously, you just want a huge space, and in a way it could happen in any huge space, but is there a particular ambience of a big space that you're after, industrial or theatrical, or what would be the perfect ambient space for you?
I think all of them. I mean, I think one of the things that Lee and I have talked about is that this piece can be mounted in many different sites. So if it's in a theatrical venue, the beautiful film that Janet Wong created for me, could be the background for the whole piece, which is when we do it in a museum space, it's not usually done. So I believe there are many ways to come into this. The ideal is in the round. The ideal is for it to be in the round like a gallery, so that it really looks like a sculpture court.
And that is the challenge, and also the beauty of this project is really that flexibility of being able to work with what the space the presenter has, but at the same time keep it focused so that we can work with what they have. So that's why we do have an option of working in a proscenium space where the audience can enter through the backstage.
Yeah. And in terms of people watching this, I mean, are you happy to do the premiere anywhere? If in a way, the minute somebody puts co-commissioning money on the table, can they then become the venue for the premiere?
I think so, yes.
My point in asking is you haven't got somebody lined up for the premiere. Actually, anybody who really wants it, as it were, by the premiere, yeah?
Absolutely. I mean, this entire displayed in this large version that Heidi wants has not been premiered yet. We've done bits and pieces of it in different places. But so yes, if somebody wants to put that commissioning money down and work with the company to develop it specifically for their space, we would be happy to premiere this large version there.
It's an amazing project. Leah Keith in Rosendale, at Heidi Latsky in New York, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're in Scotland for Dido's Ghost. It's a new work from the composer Erilyn Wallen with libretto by Wesley Stace, co-commissioned by the Dunedin Consort with the Barbican Centre, London, Edinburgh International Festival, Buxton International Festival, Mahogany Opera, and San Francisco's Philharmonia Baroque Orchestra and Chorale. Dido's Ghost carries forward the story of Purcell's Dido and Aeneas to explore what happened after Dido's death. We think it's the first contemporary opera ever to be created for a Baroque ensemble. It's produced and performed by the Dunedin Consort, who premiered it last June at the Barbican Centre in London. Then they toured it around the UK. And the Arts Desk, it's the UK online review, called it one of the most striking and original artistic products of the COVID era. So today, here to present Dido's Ghost, are the artistic director of Mahogany Opera, Frederick Wake Walker, who's in Berlin, in Germany, and the chief executive of the Dunedin Consort, Jo Buckley. They're the co-commissioners and the lead producer, and she joins us from Edinburgh in Scotland.
Thank you, Anthony. Well, as Anthony said, I'm here representing Dunedin Consort, who, for those of you who don't know, are a Baroque ensemble based in Scotland, and we're lucky to be led by the world-renowned Bach scholar, Professor John Butt. So in 2021, as Anthony has said, we commissioned and premiered this new opera, Dido's Ghost, from composer Erilyn Wallen and librettist Wesley Stace. And it's a follow-up to Purcell's Dido and Aeneas. We premiered it in a semi-stage performance at the Barbican Centre in June, and then it went on to be performed in 6 performances at Buxton and Edinburgh International Festivals during the summer. And at Edinburgh, we had soprano Golda Schultz in the title role. In 2023, it's being performed as part of Philharmonia Baroque Orchestra and Chorale's season in San Francisco, and we're now looking for further touring opportunities across the world. As you'll hear in a moment, Dido's Ghost imagines the events that unfolded after Dido's death and looks at how Aeneas is forced to come to terms with his own guilt and grief. This comes to the fore at the centre of the opera when we hear Purcell's original opera in its entirety as a flashback. And we watch as Aeneas is condemned to live through the same events once again. So the opera is very much a bringing together of past and present. The whole score is performed by a Purcell-sized orchestra on period instruments with just a couple of modern additions. Erilyn adds a bass guitar and quite a sizable percussion section. And each of the soloists doubles up as another character in the new opera too. And in fact, this is really the crux on which the whole opera hinges, how Aeneas mistakes Dido's sister, Anna, for Dido herself. And we watch as this mistaken identity causes everything to unravel. And as the drama unravels, so too does the music, with the Purcell and the Wallen becoming increasingly intertwined as the opera goes on. And without giving too much of the game away, it all culminates in a very poignant moment in which Aeneas, rather than Dido, sings Purcell's famous lament. So if it's okay, let's take a look at the opera in rehearsal and hear from Freddie how it all fits together.
Dido's Ghost is the sequel to Purcell's Dido and Aeneas. Aeneas has left Dido, abandoned her to her death, and has arrived in Italy, has married Lavinia, and is on the way to founding Rome, when a woman appears washed up on the shore who looks remarkably like Dido. But it's not Dido, it's her sister, Anna. Of course, this conjures memories of nostalgia and remorse in Aeneas. He takes Anna in to the palace, and at the banquet they perform a masque, and the masque is Purcell's Dido and Aeneas.
And what's remarkable is we didn't have to invent a story. It's right there in ancient writings, it's right there in Ovid.
As the piece develops and as the two worlds merge, the Wallen and the Purcell really start to blend, and you see the Purcell in a completely different light. Aeneas particularly is thrown into a very different light.
He's been haunted by this tremendous love It was only really the gods who could change the destiny of this couple.
It's only when he sees Anna that actually he's faced with this truth. He has some terrific music and great sorrows to sing about. It's fascinating.
Let's have a cup of tea. Excellent. Well done, everybody. Well done.
Okay, everybody know where we are and why we're here? Okay.
When Anna arrives, it's disorientating and heart-wrenching, actually. His grief and his realisation of, what he's done is really stark.
With any opera, you've got to start with the characters and the story and find the music for that and then work outwards.
When we conceived of this project, we thought that we would go for the core of the orchestra that Purcell had already decided on, a nice substantial string sound. Together with this, you have usually at least one harpsichord, if not two harpsichords, plus one strummed instrument, such as a lute or, in our case, a theorbo. So Erilyn has taken that as the basic sound, but she's added an electric guitar, which is a beautiful blend actually with Baroque instruments, and also a very large percussion section, 11 percussion instruments, including handpans, which have a very sort of eerie sound.
And I did want to conjure up a sense of Africa as well, North Africa. We actually need the percussion. It's an expressive force by itself. This piece would not be possible without it, I don't think. The score, everything in it helps the drama, helps the characterization.
The writing for Dido's Ghost is extremely ethereal and almost jazzy. Anna's music is slightly more contemporary. All of it underpinned with nods to Purcell.
What we've got is a very beautiful dialogue.
But with that, of course, there are many other styles of music, from sort of Stravinsky modernism, a little bit of atonality, all the way through to even almost a rock number at one point.
What Wes has done with the libretto is he's drawn very much not just on the Virgil, but also on the Ovid story. And he's created a text that feels very contemporary, but it's also got this kind of heightened historical operatic quality to it as well.
He is a great man of words. In many ways, the new opera takes things back to the original heightened emotions that are there in the Virgil.
Erilyn has done the same with the music and adopted elements of the Purcell.
You can sort of hear how she herself has heard Purcell over the years, how that is wound into the music.
The need for us all to be creative feels very, very pertinent, but at the same time it also feels incredibly important to reinvent the past.
The recasting of Purcell's piece as a sort of flashback makes us listen to it anew.
As a composer, you're always having conversation with the past. I have brought dissonance to the Purcell. I have pre-echoed the Purcell. Pure music is being purely receptive to influences around you. We really want to communicate the dilemmas we face of being human. I would like to feel the audience will come with us on what is an emotional journey.
So there it is, Dido's Ghost, an extraordinary new opera from Erilyn Wallen, which has already earned a string of 5-star reviews, and we hope looks set to earn its place in the repertoire. Hope it may have sparked your interest too, and looking forward to talking to you about it in more detail.
I don't think, from now on, I don't think any Baroque continuo section will be complete without an electric guitar in it. You talk about the range of formats from concert performance to fully staged in a variety of venues. And I guess the good news of that is for presenters, almost whatever space they have, they may be able to accommodate it. But is there an ideal space in your mind, an ideal way of doing this?
I don't think so. I think, like you say, it has a flexibility to it. You know, the forces are not huge. And it was very much designed not only to fit into, I mean, the current production that we have is not only designed to fit into different spaces, it was also designed during the pandemic. And so we were actually able to adjust for social distancing and what have you as well. With Mahogany Opera, I have a lot of experience of doing site-responsive work and touring work to be able to adjust and adapt. And I think it's a very important quality for a production to have, to be able to react to the specifics of a particular place and a particular audience.
No, and that'll be good news, I'm sure, to people thinking of doing it. You talk about the possibility of working with a local chorus, and I'm thinking of so many European cities which have wonderful Baroque orchestras as well as choruses. Would you be open to working with a Baroque orchestra, or does the orchestra really have to be yours and travel with it?
No, absolutely. In fact, when it goes to San Francisco in 2023, that will be Philharmonia Baroque Orchestra and Chorale, their own orchestra and chorus performing it there. And of course, for some presenters, particularly in the US, it might make sense to have a US resident orchestra and chorus and working on it. We're very open to that. We've got a really good relationship with Philharmonia Baroque. So I think there are a number of ways that it could work. And working with a local chorus would be one way of sort of slimming down the number of people that we might need to bring across from the UK, for example. And that the choruses are quite self-contained things. And of course, a lot of them are already well known from the Purcell. So that's one possible way of adapting it and doing a kind of joint production.
And I'm thinking sort of through the mind of a festival director, presumably if you are touring the production with your own chorus and orchestra, you could do concerts as well while you're there.
Absolutely. Be delighted to as well.
Yeah. No, that would make sense. You talk about the San Francisco Philharmonia performance in November next year, 2023. Are there other fixed points in your plans that people can have in their schedule so they can go and see it?
We're having quite a few conversations with quite a few organisations and hoping to set up some touring, but there's not any fixed points as yet. So quite a lot of flexibility at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Joe Buckley in Edinburgh, Scotland, and Frederick Walker in Berlin, in Germany. Thank you both very much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
And with that, we've reached half-time at this January 22 edition of ISPA's Pitch New Works. And now we can do something in this virtual edition that we can't do when we present it live. We can take a short break. Enjoy. So welcome back to part 2 of ISPA's January 22 Pitch New Works, which begins with a powerful US-Palestinian collaboration from Yasamar Dance Theatre, Last Ward. Founded in 2005, Yasamar Dance Theatre have created over 30 original works, presented in 10 countries across 4 continents. And in the past decade, they've been working as a two-centered company between New York City and Palestine. Last Ward was created by the award-winning writer and director Amir Nizar Zouabi and the choreographer Samar Haddad King. She's the founder of Yasamar. And it was developed in residencies 2018 to 2019 in the US and Palestine and in France. It's the company's largest and most ambitious work to date. It's also very deeply personal work. Last Ward will premiere this coming May 2022 at Gibney in New York. They're also commissioners of it. And here to present it are the executive director of Yasamar Dance Theatre, Zoe Rabinovitz, who's the manager and rehearsal director, performer. She's joining us from Brooklyn, New York. And the artistic director of Yasamar Dance Theatre, Samar Haddad King. She's joining us from Palestine. She's the choreographer and the composer. Your pitch.
Thanks so much, Anthony, and so wonderful to be here at ISPA this year. Yasamar Dance Theatre's mission is to create work that increases access to and promotes understanding through live performance and engagement initiatives. As Anthony mentioned, we're based between New York City and Palestine, with artists and programs rooted in both places. Since 2005, the company has navigated this space not only between these cultures and countries, but also between the practices of dance and theater. Our methods working transnationally have been covered in the Huffington Post Dance Magazine and Hyperallergic, among others. Last Ward, our newest evening-length work, is written and directed by Amir Nizar Zouabi, newly appointed artistic director of Good Chance Theatre in the UK, with choreography and sound score by Samar Haddad King. The piece is performed by 6 international YSDT dancers alongside guest artist, actor Khalifa Natour.
This is my 8th collaboration with Amir Nizar, exploring the scenes between dance and theater, such as our recent project in Marseille, France, as part of the Walk by Good Chance Theatre, pictured here. Together, we have developed a highly visual style based on a theatrical structure with dance as a primary language. In this case, we also use the Arabic language through 5 monologues that describe one man's journey towards death. Last Word opens with a man who enters a hospital and quickly learns he will not leave. Surrounded by the sterile mechanisms of modern medicine, the patient reflects on his life, relationships, and connections to place, as the ritual of doctor's visits and family calls merge with his imagination and humor that eventually transformed the stage. Beginning with the slow trickle tracked in by a shoe, the space eventually fills with soil, spilling out from inside flower pots and cabinets and from underneath the bed.
الخلايا المسؤولة عن تكوين الإنسان اللي بتخلي الطفل يطلع من بطن أمه مع منخار صغير كامل، كامل صغير، عينين كاملات صغار. بعدها طاق على الطاولة أخرى ونقض أصابعيه، رفع النظارات على منخاره وبسم وقال لي أنت عندك مرض ملوش علاج. أنت عندك مرض ملوش علاج. تبكي رغد وبدموع بعدها ترجعيه على الغسالة عشان ريحتي تروح منه. أشياء راح تعمليها لما أنا فارق. راح تنسي تسألي قواتك المفضلة كم يوم. والزريعة تموت بس مش راح تحسي بحزن شديد عشان انت صرتي متعودة على الفقدان. أشياء راح تعمليها لما أنا فارق. راح تحبي زلمة كتير 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 وتبطلي تشتري خردة بيجون. أشياء راح تعمليها لما أنا فارق.
Last Word tackles the universal experience of facing death, especially resonant for so many now in the light of COVID-19. We started creating this piece in 2018 through residencies at Baryshnikov Art Center, Chaillot National Theatre in Paris, the Palestinian National Theatre in Jerusalem, and Jacob's Pillow, when we could not have imagined what was to come. A virus that would ravage the world, a virus that is still devastating so many places. The hospital has become a new battlefront. Millions of lives have been lost. And of course, it has not been a fair or even fight, with the majority of deaths and the largest impact of the disease in this country taking place in communities of color.
By following one man's fatal journey in a hospital, Last Word invites audiences to reflect on the humanity of this man, a Palestinian, an immigrant, an other, a demographic not often seen in the media or on stage as simply human. This isn't a political work, yet to see a Palestinian in a role like this at a time when Arabs aren't often seen as people who can die from cancer in a hospital, who can be afraid or just be human, is a political statement. Last Word continues our vision to create and share work that unites audiences in the human experience and amplifies the narratives of marginalized communities.
Last Word will premiere at Gibney in New York City in May of this year, alongside engagement programs with local community partners that increase access to live performance for underserved youth and promote dialogue around the work's social, political, and artistic themes. We're currently looking for national and international touring opportunities, including an international premiere presenting partner and representation for the project. Thanks for your time, and we look forward to working with you and your communities.
It's amazing. Thank you both very much. You say, rather carefully, you say the international premiere would be available for a commissioning or co-producing partner. I mean, that has to be after New York, presumably. Nobody could sneak in before the Gibney premiere.
Yes, for sure.
Right. You talk about wanting to find presenting partners outside the US and Arab world. Are there particular places you have in mind?
I'll jump in. Europe has been a great audience for us. We've had a lot of success and really enjoyed our time working in France and Germany and in Belgium. Those countries in particular would be welcome partners, as well as the UK and other places in North America.
And I also think, to tack on to that, because this is in Arabic and Europe has been having an influx of immigrants, particularly Syrian immigrants, and also now Afghani that don't speak Arabic, obviously, but it's an in to connect with also those communities, as well as there, many artistic organizations are trying to figure out ways to connect with the other.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me there's two layers to it. There's the Arabic narrative, which I get, but there's also a completely universal narrative about a man dying, and it seems to me that there's something, as I looked at it, there's something incredibly universal about that. And one thing I did wonder was, and obviously I haven't seen the whole piece, are there any age issues for families with young children? I mean, is it? Do you have any worries or sensitivities about that?
No, we don't. We've had, I think our youngest at the showing at Jacob's Pillow was 4 at the time. And and we're able to, because there's imagery and there's comedy used and text and the different types of music, and Soil was able to keep, also when we did our shows in Palestine, we have a tendency, very different age, from very young to very old, and all were welcome and didn't get any complaints from parents.
No, That's wonderful. Thank you both very much indeed. Thank you, Zoe Rabinowitz in Brooklyn, Samar Haddad King in Palestine. Thank you both very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Next to Chile for Amor a la muerte, Love to Death, from the iconic director and choreographer Lemmy Bonifacio. Originally from Samoa, he's now based in New Zealand, and in 1995 he founded his company Mao in Auckland, dedicated to working with communities and artists from all over the world. In 2014, he began traveling to the Festival Internacional Santiago a Mil to collaborate with Mapuche artists, and he formed Mao Mapuche that same year. He's been the festival's frequent artist in residence and collaborator ever since, and this is his third collaboration with Mapuche artists. Its point of departure was the intense reaction to the assassination of a Mapuche activist, when Lemmy said it was as if a flood of energy was sweeping the country. Amor a la muerte premiered a year ago in Santiago, and here to present it is the senior advisor from the Fundación Teatro a Mil, Olga Garay English, who's the co-producer, and she is in Los Angeles in the US.
Thank you, Anthony. Well, Love to Death unites Chilean contemporary flamenco dancer Natalia Garcia Huidobro and Mapuche singer-songwriter and activist Elisa Aventaño Curaqueo. The celebrated director-choreographer Lemmy Bonifacio created this haunting piece, which premiered at Chile's renowned Festival Internacional Santiago Mil in January 2020 at the GAM Cultural Center. A co-production of Fundación Teatro Mil, Barcelona's Festival Grec, and Mao, Lemmy's company, it is his third collaboration with Mapuche artists. The Mapuche are indigenous inhabitants in present-day southern Chile and southwestern Argentina, including parts of present-day Patagonia. The collective term refers to a wide-ranging ethnicity composed of various groups who share a common social, religious, and economic structure, as well as a linguistic heritage. They have been marginalized by the government for decades, since really the Spaniards conquered Chile. Bonifacio, as Anthony explained, is originally from Samoa and is based now in New Zealand. He has explored the life of the body through cosmic vision, genealogy, philosophy, chant, dance, and ceremonies of indigenous communities. The work was sparked by the events that were detonated after the murder of Camilo Catrillanca, a Mapuche former student activist and farmer. But Love to Death is not a song of rage. It is vindication of love. Bonifacio explained, let's hope that what may emerge from these uncertain times is a meaningful determination to address inequality, a fairer participation in the economic miracle for all, and an end to the marginalization of the Mapuche. It is time now for the work to come to the world stage while giving voice to fight for racial and social justice. I hope you enjoy the video.
¿Ustedes son chilenos o son mapuches o son indígenas? Entonces tenemos que hacer sentirle la mano aquí al Congreso y decirle que aquí está el pueblo nación mapuche, el pueblo de Janiqueo, el pueblo de Pelentaro, el pueblo de Lecharo, el pueblo de estos hombres y mujeres que dieron la vida para que nosotros existiéramos aquí. No podemos seguir dejando que los diputados y senadores sigan diseñando leyes que van destinadas a usurpar nuestras tierras, a asesinar nuestra gente, nuestra humanidad, a exterminar nuestro pueblo legislando sus leyes. Hoy día con distintas formas, en el nombre de la tecnología los mandan presos, en el nombre de Dios nos siguen matando, en el nombre de todos ellos nos siguen quitando las tierras. Mientras tanto, su bolsillo y los bancos de la Unión Europea y distintos bancos del mundo no dan más abasto con la plata, y nosotros en la pobreza y la extensión se están llevando toda nuestra riqueza. Por eso, hermanos, todos juntos a defender el territorio. Y hoy día, aquí estamos los bancos, con nosotros tienen que entenderse los parlamentarios y diputados. Aquí está el pueblo de Pelentaro, aquí estamos las mujeres que defendimos a nuestros hijos, aquí estamos las madres que somos el futuro de nuestro pueblo. Con nosotros tienen que entenderse. No podemos seguir dejando que los sigan subordinando. No queremos instituciones, no queremos CONADI, no queremos Claro Origen. Nosotros, las mujeres que hemos sufrido, que hemos vivido bajo el dominio, bajo la opresión, debemos de llevar el control del monopolio económico para nuestros futuros hijos y para dar una proyección justa, divina a nuestro pueblo y necesaria. Pero no podemos seguir pidiendo una migaja, un espacio. El espacio se hace, compañeros y hermanos. El espacio tiene que reclamarlo. No hemos venido a pedirle aquí a los diputados y a los senadores que legislen para nosotros. Hemos venido a exigirles que no legislen más por nosotros, que no hablen por nosotros. Nosotros vamos a hablar por nosotros mismos. Pero nunca más, hermanos. Por eso tenemos que decidir hoy día lo que dijo el hermano Juan Valeria. Nosotros somos un pueblo-nación, y como pueblo-nación necesitamos territorio, libre de discriminación, autonomía. Las empresas que entren al territorio deben ser consultadas, y si no, fuera, fuera de nuestro territorio. Es la vida de nosotros, para ellos. No hay que la vida.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. I was just struck me watching that video. A lot of people will know Lemmy's work through those huge, epic, monumental pieces. So this is quite different. It's like a chamber piece, intimate chamber piece. And is the aesthetic that informs those huge pieces the same aesthetic as in this piece?
Oh, absolutely. I think that you captured it so beautiful by saying it's a chamber piece. It really just is an apt description of it, because he still brings that dedication to setting the mood through lighting, through the sound design, through the use of the body. So to me, it's an opportunity for presenters who might have shied away from presenting Lemmy's work because of its monumental kind of scope, to be able to introduce his work and the work of these two extraordinary Chilean artists. I mean, both Elisa and Natalia are revered in their home country, and it's time that they start getting noticed outside of their home country.
Yeah, it struck me also watching the video, just even from that video, that the sounds as if there's an extraordinary soundscape. I mean, just those two live performers, but this enormous soundscape, which in a way stands in for the monumentality of his other work. And presumably you will need presenters to give you the very best sound facilities as you tour this piece. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's such a critical element of the piece that without that, you lose half of the visceral reaction to it. I saw the piece in January in 2020 in Chile, and even this video, although it's powerful, doesn't even get close to what you feel as an audience member when you see these two women who are just so, they're so strong and they're so committed.
Yeah, no, but you feel that. You do feel that from the video. I mean, you know, there's flamenco, there's Mapuche, there's, like so much of Lemmy's work, a really sort of strong coruscating stream of politics running through it. I mean, do you have an ideal audience in mind for seeing this piece?
Well, I think that with all of the social and racial reckoning that has happened in the United States, at least in the last couple of years, this is a perfect entree into discussing how racial inequality happens in other parts of the world. And the Mapuche have been absolutely systematically left out of Chilean you know, the good life. And so they're starting to really assert their power and are very involved in the whole redesigning, wording of the Constitution of Chile. Now a Mapuche woman is the chair of the constitutional rewriting process. So it's ripe for our interpretation in communities throughout the world.
We're almost up for time, but I must just ask you one more. If you give me a quick answer. I mean, it's such a rich, complex, powerful piece, and like so much of work coming from the extraordinary, rich and complex Lemmy Bonifacio, what do you think he would want audiences to take away from the experience of seeing this piece?
Well, you know, Lemmy has always been really dedicated to giving voice to Indigenous artists and Indigenous communities. And so I think that giving an opportunity for these two extraordinary Chilean artists, especially Elisa, who's a well-recognized Mapuche activist, is exactly the kind of impact that Lemmy would want to have on local communities.
Olga Garay English, a co-producer in Los Angeles, thank you so much for bringing that extraordinary work to this pitch session.
Thank you.
Next to Australia for Silence by the choreographer Thomas E.S. Kelly, who's the co-artistic director of Karul, which is one of the most exciting Indigenous dance companies currently emerging in Australia. Thomas began his career with the leading First Nations choreography Vicky Van Hoot, and he's since worked with Australian dance companies like Chunky Move, Dance North, Sean Parker and Company, and The Farm. And this year, he's an international choreographer fellow for the McKnight Institute in Minneapolis. And all Thomas's work is grounded in First Nations cultural dance and storytelling, often referencing the historical and the contemporary struggles for Indigenous human and territorial rights. Silence is commissioned by Queensland Performing Arts Centre, Queensland's Home of the Arts, the Brisbane Festival, and the project's producers, Black Dance, and it premiered in 2020 at the Brisbane Festival. Here to present it today are the executive producer of Black Dance, Marinda Donnelly, who's the producer, the co-artistic director of Karul Projects, Thomas E.S. Kelly, who's the choreographer and performer in the piece. They're both in Brisbane, Australia. But before they speak, we'll see the video.
In this country, in Australia, since the first ships came, the treaty conversation has not properly been had. We're the only Commonwealth country that has never had one. We were tried to be killed off. We were, Australia had a genocide, they were poisoning our water and our rations, and they were herding us off cliffs and shooting us point blank, and we are continually dying as people of colour of this country, the First Nations people in custody, which is why we got so much support in Australia for Black Lives Matter. Silence is a contemporary dance work that explores the notion of a treaty in the response for Australia's relationship with its First Nations people and what a treaty could bring to First Nations Australia, or the creation of another agreement and conversation. It became a show saying we need to have meaningful conversations about how we repair the relationship between First Nations Australia, the sovereign people of this land, and the colonial government that has been established over the past 250 years. Because right now, blackfellas are down here. We are not equal. Curral is a Yugambeh, my grandmother's language word, that means everything. Because we at Curral will use everything we need to use to tell whatever story needs to be told. Focusing mainly on dance, we also use theatre, projection, animation, music composition, physical percussion to tell our story. And we started Curral to be a response to the lack of opportunities for First Nation artists. There isn't many opportunities to dance for First Nation choreographers, to tell First Nation stories.
This kind of work, the kind of work that Thomas makes, has not been possible before. And now he dares to think of it and dares to put it together. I think the audience is ready for this kind of work. The audience has become more sophisticated. They will recognise themselves in those works, and that's when art is at its most effective.
If you're Indigenous, doesn't matter whether if you're over in South Dakota or you're over in the Northern Territory or out southwest Queensland. It's the same old story.
There's the picture of former Australian Prime Minister Gough Whitlam handing sand back to Vincent Lingiari, and his people, they wanted their land back, and there was a moment where there was someone getting back their history.
That's his dust, that's his blood, that's his bone, that's his hair, and all his relatives and all his ancestors. You give that back to Murray, a blackfella in Australia, and you give them back their life.
So that imagery is in the show. I mean, we do engulf the stage in dirt, in us reclaiming country, bringing it back in, and it comes in little pockets, and then it becomes a bit bigger, and then it starts to spread. And then there's a section about an Australian Football League player named Nicky Winmar, and he received a lot of racial vilification from playing, and he went into this game and he went up to this audience and he lifted up his top and he pointed to his skin to be like, yeah, I am a black person, and look what the hell I've just done here.
The brilliant Winmar has kicked that was his first goal of the game. Iconic, every blackfella, in the country, just identified with that. We just felt so proud.
Traditional dance that I grew up dancing was that of my grandmother's people, which is the Minyabul people. You have an opportunity to see something you haven't seen before, because the movement style, the dance technique, is grounded in the oldest living culture that this planet currently has. We're an emerging company. We're not stopping there. We are looking at creating a network that gives the opportunities to tell our stories, both at our local level, inside of our communities, on the national level and on the international level. By showcasing the strength and the tenacity that we have here, that we've been fighting with.
Any country where there's been a revolution knows about these things. They can see the parallels in their own countries.
We are strong black people from this country. We have stories to share. We will use whatever we need to use to tell whatever story needs to be told. We're here. My name is Thomas E.S. Kelly. I am a proud First Nations Australian Minyabul, Yugambeh and Wiradjuri man, and I am co-artistic director of Curral Projects. Silence is an urgent call for a meaningful conversation with marginalised peoples. I spent 4 years making silence because I wanted to add to the political conversations going on here inside of Australia. When I spoke with Uncle Bob and Uncle Richard, they told me that these ideas and issues have been investigated for the past 20, 30, 40 years. So silence is just as relevant today as it was when those first ships arrived 252 years ago.
Yama, my name is Marinda Donnelly, and I'm a very proud First Nations Australian Wiradjuri woman, executive producer of Black Dance. We are the producers of Silence. We work with Curral to tour nationally and internationally. In fact, we're about to embark on a major national tour in 2022 of Silence. We'd love to start a conversation with you about touring internationally in 2024. Our dear friend and colleague, Judy Harkwell, is our contact person. Please reach out to her if you'd like to have a conversation with us about silence. Silence breaks the silence.
Thank you very much indeed. It is shocking that there's a no treaty thing. I actually hadn't realised that. It is shocking. Do you see this work as helping global audiences relate to issues like treaty and land back and understand them better?
Yeah, I think totally that this kind of conversations that happen inside of silence is sharing the information like treaty, like land back, like repairing the damage that's been done over, as in Australia, 252 years. You know, the conversations that can be had between First Nations people and non-First Nations people is conversations that involves everybody. And so something like silence, having that dialogue and that opportunity for it to spark further conversation is something that we've really found has been, really exciting on what it's done post seeing the work. It's so much more than just what's in the theatre. It's what happens outside. And that's what we've been able to do with the show.
And if you, if you're touring to communities who don't know a lot about these issues, would you tour with educational projects, with anything that would help people understand this and contextualize it more?
Absolutely. I mean, it's even inside of Australia, we are building an educational kit to go alongside of the work that we're doing with silence. So we want to make sure that when this work comes, that when you leave the show and talking about a treaty, that you are understanding what it is that we're talking about. Because as I'm saying, it's a conversation starter. We want to make sure that we're giving as much information as we can. So educational packs, for schools, but for general public is something that we are building alongside of this work. So absolutely.
No, that's tremendous. And I'm sure there are communities who will really value that a lot. You talk very eloquently about the global community of Indigenous artists. And I wondered, are you particularly keen to tour to cities and countries who have Indigenous communities, or in a way, do you want not to do that? I wonder which way around you're looking at the tour.
No, I mean, this is some research that I've done into this, which is very interesting, that I believe is very interesting, is that, we have this very shared history of as First Nations people with colonization across the globe. Something that we looked at that I found is if we look at the UN right now, out of all of the countries that are a part of the UN, 88% of them was colonized by the British. So when we see that, or if not colonized, had a strong military presence from the British. So when we look at that kind of, history, the shared history that we all have, that's something that we see when we go into communities with First Nations people and communities is definitely who we connect with and the relationships that we have, and not just the First Nations people, but the communities that are built around, the First Nations history of a place.
But before we go, can I just ask you a quick technical question? You talk about end-on configuration, but other arrangements may be possible, and I can sort of imagine that. Is there an ideal setting that in your, what would be your ideal setting and configuration for this?
As in, relationships with people. When we come into a place, we want to, we want to meet community. We don't want to just come in and do a work and then leave again. So we're really interested in having a reciprocal relationship when we come into communities. So coming into a place, meeting the community. We are a First Nations organisation, so we have protocol where we want to meet the First Nations people of the place that we're gathering, and then having an open, larger conversation and relationship building, whether it's through meetings, conversations, classes. So it's not just the show coming in, doing it and then leaving it. We want to come and build, a relationship that can be forged, across the waters and cross countries, especially as we're opening up again in the world.
We've spoken as well.
I was going to say, we're time for time, but I was going to say, I'm absolutely sure that there will be presenters watching this who will absolutely want to relate to you in that kind of way. From Black Dance, Marinda Donnelly, Choral Project, Thomas E.S. Kelly. It's an absolutely amazing project. Thank you both so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you very much.
Next, back to Canada and Quebec for Violence, Violence, by the performer and director and author Marie Brassard. Early in her career, she worked in close collaboration with Robert Lepage in theatre and in films. Now, working in partnership with musicians and with visual artists, Marie's creating a striking body of magical, technologically rich theatre works, taking audiences into a magical world where familiar boundaries get blurred and the relationship between humans and technology becomes as intimate as the relationships between performers and audience. Violence is her newest work, and it premiered last June in Montreal, at the Place des Arts during the Festival de Théâtre Transamérique. It's produced by Infrarouge, co-produced with the Festival Transamérique, and here to present it are the production director and the tour manager at Infrarouge, Anne McDougall, but first the artistic director of Infrarouge, Marie Brassard, who's the author, director of the piece, and they're both joining us from Montreal.
Thank you. Since 2001, Infrarouge has produced numerous original creations performed in French, English, and Japanese, where the exploration of sound and visual arts have always been given a place of privilege. These productions have traveled to more than 20 countries in the Americas and Europe, as well as Australia and Japan. Working with collaborators from across the globe, we acknowledge the vital responsibility to the integration of artists who represent and reflect the vast cultural diversity of our world. And today we are pitching one of our most daring and ambitious projects, Violence, Violence. At the origin of the project is an anecdote. Coming back from a trip to Japan, I offered a book to my goddaughter, Leon, then 2.5 years old. And as we looked together at the images, she pointed to a barely perceptible dot in the sky of a drawing, and she said, "Look, it looks like a small Japanese flower that hasn't been born yet." And I was startled by her remark and decided to honor Leon's intelligent sentence and translate its possible meanings through an elaborated artwork. And this led me down an unexpected path. And this creative journey began to unfold during residencies in Montreal and Marseille, in Göteborg and Tokyo. And once while there, I visited an exhibition at the Tokyo Mori Art Museum titled Catastrophe and the Power of Art, What Art Can Do in Chaotic Times When the Future is Uncertain. And it featured visual artworks inspired by the unspeakable tragedies that have shaken Japan throughout its history, and I was shocked and moved by it. With support from Japanese art organizations, I made a plan to travel, accompanied by my team, to Tokyo and then to Kinosaki, near the Japan Sea, to finalize the piece and with 2 women artists from Japan. And this perfect plan was interrupted by the pandemic. As the second wave made us believe that we would have to postpone our creation once more, the sentence from the Tokyo exhibition came back to my mind. What art can do in chaotic times when the future is uncertain. And I thought we should go on. And in this huge distance in space and time, collaborating with the Japanese team and a group of dedicated artists between Montreal, Japan, and beyond, via a virtual rehearsal setup, we ended up creating performances and short films for the stage. And the result is Violence, a surreal story combining visual and sound art, cinematic realism, and expressionist theater, meditation on insidious violence that shapes us against our will. I believe that in these uncertain times, art is more than ever a tool for resisting violence in all its forms, the low rumble of which may be heard everywhere.
Millions de petites souris, 5 millions de petites souris, 6 millions de petites souris, 7 millions de petites souris. Je rêvais que j'étais emportée par les eaux d'un fleuve. C'était le fleuve Amazon. Et j'ai senti alors un souffle sur ma tête, comme le souffle d'un esprit.
N'aie pas peur, n'aie pas peur. Ferme les yeux.
Je ne veux plus dormir.
Tu te souviens de moi? C'est moi, le chanteur de ton enfance, celui que tu aimais tant. N'aie pas peur.
Je me souviens de cette ruelle où j'avance. Je me souviens de la mer. Je me souviens de ce pont. Je me souviens de l'arbre et du temple. J'avance dans ce couloir. Je me noie dans la mer. Je descends dans ce trou. Sentoki ya helicopter no propela no yo ni don 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 le temps des cerises, le gai rossignol, le merle moqueur seront tous en fête. Les belles auront la folie en tête, et les amoureux du soleil au cœur. Quand nous chanterons le temps des cerises, sifflera bien mieux le merle moqueur.
Violence premiered in Montreal in June 2021, and then it traveled to Athens this past September. The Japanese performers joined us virtually on stage via the short black and white films, and our plan is now to integrate them in person for this odyssey to be truly complete.
Thank you very much. It's absolutely extraordinary. You say you're seeking commissioning funds, but you have already premiered it. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's correct. We premiered in Montreal at the Festival Transamérique, but as Marie explained in the introduction, it's still a work in progress. We are hoping to integrate the 2 Japanese actresses in the spring of 2022 and are looking for co-producing partners and, of course, presenters.
Yeah. And you mentioned that the company may be able to apply for grants. Are those particular to specific places? I mean, can you say a little bit about what proportion of the costs they would cover and how that would work?
It's an excellent question. I'm going to let Marie, who is the grant specialist, apply to that.
The question was
the grants. What kind of grants?
Oh yeah, well, we are supported by the Conseil des Arts de Canada and the Conseil des Arts et des Lettres du Québec, and we are supported. The way we function is really with co-producers who are like, you know, pitching in and helping us to go to the, I would say, to the end of our dreams, to make it as good as we want. Yeah.
But I think it's specifically we can get help for especially the travel costs, the freight costs, and that I think covers for most regions in the world, Anthony.
Yeah. And the touring party I see is 13, I think, if I've got that right, and there are 4 performers. So the other 9 are what? All technical team, or what are they?
They're technical teams. We have 4 people on stage and everyone else working backstage.
Yeah. Is any? I couldn't really tell. Is any of the music live, or is it all recorded?
You mean during the film? All the music is live.
Yeah.
And the video are being shot live as well, but they have been recorded obviously because they are work of art. And the black and white video are pre-recorded. They have been shot while on a trip in Japan.
And for Marie, most of her interventions are live.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of pre-recorded moments as well.
Yeah. I mean, are there any particular countries and regions you think this would resonate well? Are there, I mean, it seems to me extraordinarily universal piece in a way, but are there particular places you'd be interested to take it?
I think universal is actually, Marie speaks to this sense of violence that happens at an early age, how we're all tried to be conformed and put into a system. And I think it speaks universally. We are very interested in getting back to France, for example, Europe. We're hoping to tour this coming spring and summer, and Asia as well.
Tremendous. Thank you both very much from Infrarouge and McDougall and Marie Brassard in Montreal. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So before we finish, we need to properly thank 3 groups of people for this Pitch New Work session. Firstly, the sponsors of Pitch New Works, welcoming back once again the great global theatre designers Fisher Dax, loyal supporters of ISPA over so many years, and it's great to have their partnership in this Pitch New Work session. Secondly, ISPA's brilliant pitch committee, who distilled the 63 original projects down to the 9 that we've seen in the last couple of hours. Thirdly, ISPA's technical and production team for the Pitch New Work. Each time it takes months of painstaking preparation. So from me, personally, really grateful thanks and respect to them for all that work. And finally, thanks to our presenters for sharing their visions with us. As we've heard over the last 2 hours, almost every one of these projects has been impacted in some way by the COVID pandemic. Each one is its own miraculous triumph over adversity, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat, making me admire these 9 teams even more. This is the moment when they really, really need your support, our support, your support, as they piece back together all the international relationships after the last 2 hideously disrupted years and figure out how these amazing visions can reach international audiences. But of course, it isn't just the pitch presenters whose work's been upended by the pandemic. Every one of us has had our lives turned upside down in the past 2 years, making networks like ISPA and the friendships that come from them so incredibly important. If there's one lesson of the last 2 years that stands out above all others, it's that none of us is alone. That core value of ISPA's founder, everybody in, nobody out. It's never been more true than it is today. Just as important as looking after our own welfare is looking after one another as colleagues and as friends. And I want us all to leave this pitch session with that truth in the very front of our minds. So with that, wherever in the world you're participating in this ISPA Congress, keep safe, be well, and do stay connected.